It's a Nintendo news week this week as the delayed Nintendo Direct finally released, kicking things off with the announcement for Luigi's Mansion 3, headed for the Switch sometime next year. But if you need to do some ghost busting before then, the original Luigi's Mansion is headed for the 3DS next month with some new features like 2-player co-op. Also getting ported to the 3DS is Kirby's Epic Yarn coming over from the Wii with a few new features. Meanwhile, Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story is getting a 3DS remake. Much like Superstar Saga before it, the 3DS remake will not only update the Game Boy Advanced original, it'll also include a second RTS mode featuring the villains of the series. And it's not just the 3DS that's getting a slew of ports and remakes. Over on the Switch, New Super Mario Bros. U is the latest in the Wii U library to jump up a generation. The Switch port will include both the Mario and Luigi versions of the game, along with introducing new playable characters Nabbit and Toadette. The Switch's port library will stay on the roll with Katamari Damacy Reroll, the cult classic rolling game with a killer soundtrack. Civilization 6 is also on the way, although it's unclear how much of the DLC will be coming with it. And The World Ends With You is getting ported to the Switch as well. The World Ends With You Final Remix will land on the Switch next month with a new story section, but that's far from the only RPG in the works. Final Fantasy is coming to the Switch in a big way over the next year. The GameCube classic Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered Edition is heading for the Switch, thankfully with online co-op rather than whatever Game Boy Advance craziness they had last time around. And while Final Fantasy 15 is probably a little too big for the Switch, the pocket-sized version, which got a surprise release the day of the Direct, seems to fit rather nicely. As does World of Final Fantasy Maxima, a new port of the Pokemon-ish Final Fantasy game with some additional features. Don't fret if you already have the PC or PS4 version though, the additional Maxima content will be available as paid DLC for the base versions of the game. And the ports just keep on coming. Final Fantasy 7, 9, 10, 10-2, and Final Fantasy 12 The Zodiac Age will all be hitting the Switch next year. But there's more than just ports and remakes coming to the Switch. For new games, Game Freak is working on a new RPG. The tentatively titled Town will put you in a small village beset by monsters. What's interesting about this though is that the entire game will apparently be set exclusively in this town. And, as unintentionally revealed last week, Yoshi's Crafted World is going to be a thing. The new Yoshi game looks like it plays just as you would expect a Yoshi game to play, with the added mechanic of being able to change the levels by changing the camera perspective. Regarding the Switch's online infrastructure, surprisingly little was announced in the Direct, more like just a rehash of things we already know. Online play will require the subscription service in many, but not all cases. While you can expect online multiplayer on first-party titles to be limited to subscribers, some third-party titles, namely Fortnite, can be played without it. The subscription service will also grant access to a library of classic NES games that can also be played online, though details are still a little fuzzy about whether this library will be ever-growing or merely a rotating selection. One thing that is pretty cool though are these NES controllers built to be compatible with the Switch. Cloud-based game save backups are also a touted feature, although Nintendo is being pretty stingy about it. While Steam and Microsoft backup game saves at no charge and Sony's PlayStation Plus will keep them on hand for up to 6 months after your subscription lapses, Nintendo will delete your backups immediately if you don't remain subscribed. And of course, for your co-op communication needs, Nintendo has figured out a revolutionary new way for players to talk to each other, and all they need is a cell phone. Finally, the Direct wrapped up with Nintendo's greatest troll yet. Animal Crossing fans have been patiently awaiting the announcement of a new game and were thus super excited to see Isabelle appear, only for it to turn into an announcement that she'll be coming to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Interestingly enough, with a unique moveset all her own, it seems like Isabelle will be a unique character instead of an echo fighter of the villager. But just as things were looking grim for Animal Crossing fans, the emotional roller coaster took another turn with the announcement that there would be a new Animal Crossing game after all. Animal Crossing for Switch will appear in 2019. But for releases a little closer to the mark, heading into theaters this week, we have The House with the Clock in Its Walls. This one kinda came out of nowhere, but it looks really neat. Cate Blanchett and Jack Black are eccentric wizards taking care of a young orphan in a magical house that may or may not contain a clock that can end the world. I'm into it. Meanwhile, for something a little more graphic, there's Assassination Nation. This one is kinda hard to get a read on, but it seems to be about a city that goes kinda nuts when the entire population gets hacked and all their dark secrets are put out there for the world to see. Over on television, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are back with a new incarnation on Nickelodeon. While most of the Turtles are pretty familiar, Leonardo in particular seems to be weirdly out of character, putting Raph in the leadership role and, well, look.
Time to put our training to use.
What training? You guys have been training?
That's not really the Leo I know, but still, the art style is pretty neat. And in books, if you can't get enough Tomb Raider, S.D. Perry has written an official tie-in novel for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, presumably setting up the stage for Laura's new adventure. In video games, Speed Brawl is an interesting looking one hitting the PC this week. Described as a momentum-based brawler, it looks like you're constantly on the move as you punch your way through a kinda post-apocalyptic looking world. Underhero isn't shy about its influences. Inspired by Paper Mario, this indie RPG looks like a neat mix of 2D adventure and time-based combat. Heading into space, Star Control Origins will have you exploring the galaxy, meeting alien races, and getting tied up in intergalactic warfare. Speaking of which, Final Theory skips straight to the warfare part as a turn-based combat game that has you spreading your fleet across the stars. Meanwhile, it's another week and another indie classic heading for the Switch. This time it's Undertale, filling the Switch with determination as you either murder or make friends with a bunch of monsters while jamming to a kick-ass soundtrack. Also releasing this week, across all platforms, even though I couldn't find a Steam page for it, is Capcom's Beat 'em Up Bundle, a collection of beat 'em up classics including Final Fight, Captain Commando, The King of Dragons, Knights of the Round, Warriors of Fate, Armored Warriors, and Battle Circuit, the latter two making their console debut. And for fans of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Torna the Golden Country is a hefty DLC expansion that doesn't actually require owning the base game to play, but I can't imagine that would matter to its target audience anyway. That leaves us with this week's awesome video. It's been a while since we've seen something from Corridor Digital, but this week they put a modern spin on The Legend of Zelda that's worth giving a look. That's everything for this week, so what would you like to see get ported to the Switch? Let me know in the comments. As always, I appreciate likes and appreciate subscribers even more, so be sure to share this video with your friends and have a great week!